In 1811, church bells in Boston started ringing by themselves, not because someone pulled the ropes, because the ground was shaking so violently 1,000 miles away that the vibrations traveled across the entire eastern United States. The Mississippi River ran backwards, islands disappeared, forests were swallowed whole. And this happened not in California but in the heart of America. The new Madrid Seismic Zone, a fault line so dangerous that when it ruptures again, and scientists say it will, it could kill millions and destroy the entire Midwest. So what happens when the ground beneath America's heartland tears itself apart? Most Americans have never heard of the new Madrid Fault. If you ask someone about earthquakes in the United States, they'll immediately think of California. The San Andreas Fault, the big one. But here's what they do and know. The most powerful earthquakes in American history did not happen in California. They happened in Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Between December 1811 and February 1812, the new Madrid Seismic Zone produced 4 earthquakes estimated at magnitude 7.5 or higher. To put that in perspective, those quakes were felt across 2 million square miles. People in Washington, D.C. ran into the streets in panic. Furniture moved in homes as far away as South Carolina. And in the epicenter near the Mississippi River, the destruction was apocalyptic. But that was over 200 years ago, when the Midwest was barely populated. Today, the region has millions of people. Major cities like St. Louis, Memphis, Nashville, Little Rock, Evansville. Critical infrastructure, bridges, dams, nuclear power plants, hospitals, and none of it is built to withstand a major earthquake because most people do not think earthquakes happen in the Midwest. So imagine what occurs when the new Madrid Fault, which has been quiet for 2 centuries, suddenly wakes up. It starts on a Wednesday afternoon. People are at work, kids are in school, traffic is moving through downtown Memphis. Then, without warning, the ground jerks violently. Not a gentle, rolling motion like you might feel in a minor quake. This is sharp, brutal, and disorienting. Within seconds, buildings start collapsing. The Midwest wasn't built for this. Structures in California have strict earthquake codes, reinforced steel, flexible foundations. The Midwest has none of that. Brick buildings, some over 100 years old, crumble instantly. Walls fall outward, crushing cars and people on the sidewalks below. What do you think goes through someone's mind when they look up and see a building collapsing toward them? St. Louis, one of the largest cities near the fault, experiences catastrophic damage within the first minute. The Gateway Arch, an iconic symbol of the city, sways violently. Engineers designed it to handle wind, not seismic activity. Cracks spider web up its steel legs. Tourists inside scream as the structure groans and shifts. Some are thrown to the ground. Others cling to railings, praying the arch doesn't collapse. Outside, the city is in chaos. Skyscrapers built in the 1960s and 70s, before anyone worried about earthquakes in Missouri, twist and buckle. Windows explode outward in glittering waves. Glass rains down on the streets, slicing through anyone unlucky enough to be outside. Highways and bridges are the first infrastructure to fail. The Midwest has thousands of bridges crossing rivers, many of them old and poorly maintained even before the earthquake. When the ground shakes with magnitude 8 force, these bridges don't just crack. They collapse entirely. The Poplar Street Bridge in St. Louis, which carries Interstates 55, 64, and 70 over the Mississippi River, buckles and falls. Cars plunge into the water below. Drivers don't have time to react. One moment they're crossing the river, the next they're airborne, falling toward the churning water. How many people do you think survive that fall? Almost none. Memphis sits directly on top of the new Madrid Fault. The city doesn't just shake, it liquefies. The soil beneath Memphis is soft, saturated sediment deposited by the Mississippi River over thousands of years. When the earthquake hits, that soil behaves like a liquid. Buildings don't just collapse from the shaking. They sink. Entire neighborhoods tilt and slide as the ground underneath them turns to quicksand. Houses that were on solid foundations minutes ago are now half buried, tilting at impossible angles. People trapped inside claw at windows, trying to escape before they're completely swallowed by the earth. What do you think it feels like to be inside a house that's sinking into the ground? The Mississippi River, which flows through the heart of the affected region, responds violently to the quake. Just like in 1811, the river changes course. Massive landslides along the riverbanks dump millions of tons of soil and debris into the water. The flow is disrupted, dammed in some places, causing the river to temporarily reverse direction. Barges carrying cargo are caught in the chaos, some capsizing, others smashing into bridges and docks. The river, one of the most critical trade routes in America, becomes impassable. But that's not even the worst part. Dams. The Midwest has numerous dams along the Mississippi and its tributaries. These dams control flooding, generate power, and provide drinking water to millions. They were not designed to withstand a magnitude 8 earthquake. When the shaking hits, cracks form in the concrete. Water begins seeping through. Engineers at the dams realize immediately what's about to happen, but there's nothing they can do. Within hours, the first dam fails. Billions of gallons of water are released in a catastrophic flood. Towns downstream have no warning. A wall of water 30 feet high roars through valleys, obliterating everything in its path. Homes are ripped from foundations. Cars are swept away like toys. Thousands of people drown, unable to outrun the flood. Let's talk about the death toll in those first few hours. In the immediate epicenter, near the Mississippi River, tens of thousands die instantly. Collapsed buildings, bridge failures, drownings. But the real tragedy is in the cities. Memphis, a city of over 600,000 people, sees buildings collapse across the entire metro area. Hospitals, already overwhelmed with injured patients, begin to fail structurally. Doctors and nurses work frantically as ceilings crack and walls shift. Some hospitals are evacuated, but where do you take critically ill patients when every road is destroyed and every building is unsafe? What do you think happens to people on life support when the power goes out and the backup generators are buried under rubble? St. Louis faces similar devastation. The death toll climbs rapidly as rescue efforts are hampered by continuous aftershocks. These aren't minor tremors. Aftershocks from a magnitude 8 quake can themselves be magnitude 6 or 7. Every time the ground shakes again, more buildings collapse. More people die. Rescue workers are forced to retreat repeatedly, unable to reach victims trapped under debris. What do you think those trapped people feel, hearing rescuers nearby but unable to reach them, knowing another aftershock could bury them forever? Infrastructure across the Midwest collapses systematically. Power grids fail as transmission towers topple and substations are destroyed. 30 million people lose electricity. Natural gas lines rupture, causing explosions and fires that spread rapidly through damaged neighborhoods. Water mains break, flooding streets and leaving entire cities without drinking water. Communication networks go dark. Cell towers collapse. Internet cables are severed. People can't call for help. They can't reach their families. The isolation and fear are as devastating as the quake itself. Now, let's talk about something most people don't consider. The new Madrid Seismic Zone sits in the middle of America's agricultural heartland. This region produces corn, soybeans, wheat, and livestock that feed the entire country and much of the world. When the earthquake destroys roads, railways, and river transport, food can't move. Grain silos collapse, spilling millions of tons of crops. Farmland is fractured and unusable. But here's the real problem. It's not just about this year's harvest. The earthquake changes the landscape permanently. Fields that were flat are now uneven, crossed with deep fissures. Irrigation systems are destroyed. It will take years, maybe decades, to restore agricultural production to previous levels. What do you think happens to food prices across America when the Midwest stops producing food? The economic impact is staggering. The new Madrid region isn't as wealthy as California, but it's critical to America's economy. Manufacturing hubs, distribution centers, transportation networks. When the quake destroys this infrastructure, supply chains across the entire country collapse. Factories in the region produce auto parts, machinery, chemicals, and countless other products. When those factories are reduced to rubble, every industry that depends on them grinds to a halt. What do you think happens to the American economy when the industrial heartland is suddenly gone? Let's go back to the people trying to survive. Within 24 hours, it becomes clear that help is not coming quickly. FEMA is overwhelmed. The scale of the disaster is too large. Rescue teams from across the country are dispatched, but roads are impassable, bridges are down. Helicopters can only do so much. Meanwhile, survivors are facing dire conditions. No power, no water, no food. Grocery stores, those that are still standing, are looted within hours. What do you think desperate people do when their children are hungry and there's no help in sight? Hospitals that survived the initial quake are now facing impossible situations. Thousands of injured people need care, but supplies are running out. No electricity means no way to perform surgeries. No clean water means infections spread rapidly. Doctors are forced to make horrific decisions about who gets treatment and who doesn't. People with treatable injuries die because there simply aren't enough resources. What do you think it does to a doctor's mind to turn away a dying patient because they have to save their limited supplies for someone with a better chance of survival? Disease becomes a major killer within days. Sewage systems are destroyed, contaminating water sources. Bodies, thousands of them, lie in the rubble, decomposing in the heat. Cholera and typhoid spread rapidly through survivor camps. People who survived the earthquake and the aftershocks now die from drinking contaminated water. What do you think it is like to survive the worst natural disaster in American history, only to die from an illness that is easily preventable under normal circumstances? Winter is coming. The earthquake happens in October. Survivors have maybe 6 weeks before temperatures drop below freezing. Homes are destroyed. Heating systems don't work. There's no electricity. FEMA can provide some temporary shelters, but not nearly enough for millions of displaced people. What do you think happens when winter arrives and millions of people are living in tents or damaged buildings with no heat? Hypothermia kills thousands more. The death toll, already in the hundreds of thousands, continues to climb. The federal government declares the entire Midwest a disaster zone, but the response is inadequate. The scale is too large. The resources don't exist. States on the coast send supplies, but getting them to the affected areas is nearly impossible. The Mississippi River, normally a highway for goods, is blocked by debris and impassable. Trains can't run because tracks are twisted and destroyed. Trucks are limited to a few functioning roads, creating massive bottlenecks. What do you think it feels like to be a FEMA coordinator staring at a map, knowing that millions of people need help right now, and you have no way to reach them? Months pass. The death toll has reached 500,000. Not from the earthquake itself, but from the cascading failures, starvation, disease, exposure, lack of medical care. The Midwest, once the thriving heart of America, is now a wasteland of ruined cities and abandoned towns. Survivors who can leave do. They move west, east, anywhere but here. But millions are trapped, unable to afford to relocate or unwilling to leave behind everything they've ever known. What do you think it's like to walk through your hometown and see nothing but rubble, knowing it will never be rebuilt in your lifetime? Here's the terrifying truth. This isn't some far-fetched scenario. The new Madrid Seismic Zone is real, it's active, and scientists say there's a significant probability of a major earthquake within the next 50 years. Some estimates put the chance at 7 to 10% in the next 50 years, which might not sound like much until you realize that tests higher than the chance of a major quake on some segments of the San Andreas Fault. The Midwest is unprepared. Buildings aren't reinforced. Emergency plans are minimal. When the new Madrid Fault ruptures, and it will, the devastation will be unlike anything America has ever experienced. So what would you do? If you live in the Midwest and the ground starts shaking, do you know where to go? Do you have supplies? Do you have a plan? Or would you be one of the millions caught completely off guard, trapped in a disaster that nobody saw coming? If this scenario opened your eyes to a threat you didn't know existed, leave a comment below telling me if you live near the new Madrid Fault and what your plan is. And if you want more deep dives into America's hidden catastrophic threats, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is America Doom, where we explore the disasters that could destroy the United States from within. Drop a like if this changed how you see the Midwest, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay prepared, because the ground beneath the heartland is not as stable as you think.